Mr. Des Barker, working on a brown falcon down at the museum. He is a taxidermist of great renown. He first removes the body of the hawk and inserts a mannequin made of polystyrene. He wires parts of the body into place, puts it on a stand and grooms it for exhibition. The Tasmanian devil is now being groomed to put into an exhibition of sight and touch for children in the museum. These are some of the animals that will be part of the exhibition: a wombat, the possum, platypus, Cape Barren goose, the falcon and the devil. Children quite often miss out on touching and feeling the animals that they see. And this is, although the animals will wear out with the touching, Mr. Barker thinks it's well worth the effort that he puts into the exhibitions. Mr. Barker is renowned as one of the best taxidermists in the world. And after viewing his exhibitions, I firmly believe that this is so. Mr. Dallas Pritchard, he is an engraver using an electric machine tool, freehand, he does most of the engraving of medals and cups in Hobart for the schools and sports clubs. We now go to a different type of engraver. This man, Mr. Keith Hyland, uses a tool called a graver, as used in many, many years ago, the old-fashioned tools. He uses them to create beautiful pictures on copper. Very painstaking and hard work, concentrating the whole time. The depth and direction of the cuts gives the dimension of the three-dimension look on the finished article. This man is a jeweller, and this is his hobby work, a picture of Mount Wellington and the old sailing ships, the days gone by. This is a corner of Hobart, Golding's Corner in the middle of Hobart, showing some of the old shops. Another view of Mount Wellington. This is Mr. Fred Morley, who at the age of 78 is still working in his workshop, repairing and doing up beautiful furniture, making furniture as well. He is now turning a leg for a table, for an occasional table. This is the cutting out of the top for the table. Finishing off one of his, this is a writing desk that he has spent many, many hours creating. Beautifully finished. He will spend hours polishing it to get it to the right finish that he needs and wants on that. He does hand carving to replace missing bits on antique furniture. Very painstakingly reproducing the missing pieces. The polishing process and the finishing off takes many of his hours of spare time. These are some of his beautiful finished pieces. Mr. Morley was trained as a carpenter and worked in his early days at Werner and Green, who was a very, very, very old established furniture business. Since his retirement, he has spent his time doing up this beautiful sewing table with its hidden work basket, where the lady of the house kept her sewing and knitting in a tidy spot, has been beautifully restored and placed in a place of honour in their home. Mr. Sargson, he is a jeweller and silver and goldsmith, having spent all his life in Hobart in a jeweller shop. He is now aged 95 and still beating metal. This is a copper bowl that he is preparing. He is planishing it out on a former. It takes many, many hammer blows each time the metal is annealed to get the article into shape. This is the annealing process, which has to be done each time the metal hardens before he can go on hammering again. The flame softens the metal and allows him to work it into shape, and as he beats it, it hardens again. So the process is repeated until he has the article in the shape he needs. These are some of the beautiful articles that have been made by him over the years, and he is here talking to his daughter as she polishes the article. This is a monstrance, a beautiful gold cross made for the Catholic Church. Many years ago, the original was stolen, and the gold and jewels were donated by the congregations, the Catholic congregations, to replace the cross. And after 15 years' hard work, he produced this beautiful thing, which is used by the Catholics in Tasmania. This is the workshop of Alan Wiggins, an A-grade motor engineer, tool maker, instrument maker, a A-grade welder, inventor and machine designer, and a clockmaker. He is here milling at the lathe. He's turning, and this is milling on a homemade milling machine. And the machine was made in the workshop. Over the last 12, 13 years, he has made all these miniature working models of famous engines. This is a tower clock, a folio verge model that he made, a hip clock, and a Hope Jones clock. These clocks are authentic in every detail, and this one especially keeps wonderful time. Spends many of his hours making authentic models. This is the water wheel of the Anchor Mine on the northeast coast. The Uniflow engine, as used in some of the mills. A jackass, quite often. This was one of the huge engines used in mining and timber milling. A portable Marshall, which is a beautiful little working model. She was built in 1904. This is a mini traction engine that was used by the Hobart City Council. Mr. Neville Campbell, a watchmaker and radio ham. He is here turning a staff for a small watch. And fitting the wheel, balance wheel, to the staff. This is trying the balance wheel in a poising machine. After getting the correct thing, he pops it into fits it into the wheel into the watch, and the watch immediately starts to tick. That's showing the little bits that he had to put together to get the watch to go. This is the explosion of a watch, all the pieces that go together to make a watch. Neville Campbell is also a radio ham. Having made a lot of this equipment for himself, he transmits by key and by voice. He is here working the keys that he has made himself. He is now contacting a station. This is the glass blowing lab down at the university, where Mr. Tony Triffett spends many hours making scientific glass instruments. This is a close-up of him working at making a huge bubble. For many of the instruments that they use, he has to wind glass tubing, and this is done in quite a big lathe using a flame to heat the glass as it's wound slowly on a former. These scientific instruments, with the wound tubing inside of them, are beautiful to behold. He spends many hours a day creating things for various departments. These are some of the things that he has made, and some ready to be repaired or remade. Quite a lot of instruments are made from glass tubing, and it's surprising what he can do with a flame and a piece of glass and his breath. He also makes beautiful little things like this bell in his spare time. This is the restoration of St David's Cathedral in Hobart. The work was carried out by Leo Luckman Company. The manager was Mr Monaghan and the foreman Mr Jeff Butcher. Mr Jeff Butcher carving a stone to put, using the old tools to put it into the cathedral to replace some of the worn and fretted stonework. He is there using a claw tool. The men being directed as to the things they have to do to complete pieces for the tower. This is the foreman keeping an eye on the workmen, and they're talking to the manager. One of the young apprentices using a tool, and this is the finishing off with water and stone before the stonework is put into place. It is rubbed down to give it that fine finish. Clearing out a space to put the stones in. This is the actual putting in place of the large stones that the men have been working on. These workmen repairing the cathedral are using the tools that were used when the original building was put up. The hammer, the chisel, the Muir's boatyard. This boatyard was used to build boats many, many years ago. The men here are working on landfall, 44 feet in length, and she was built in 1937 under the supervision of Piers Coverdale. And Mr Max Muir was apprenticed under him in that year and helped to build her originally. She is being restored to her original beauty. The men working on her are doing a wonderful job, and it looks as if they're doing a better job than the furniture makers. There's Jock and Max Muir discussing an old slipping book that was at the yard when Piers Coverdale was there.
Right up top.
This book contains all the old details of the old boats that were slipped in the yard for repair. The men working in the workshop, Max Muir, who's overseeing the pieces being made for the boat. planing, and the men painting the hull of a boat in the yard. Which is made easier by using rollers. Mr. Jock Muir overseeing the cutting of the sails in the loft. He is an expert sailmaker. And he makes sails for most of the yachts that sail on the Derwent River. This is blacksmithing, one of the dying arts. Mr. Jack Hodge at his forge. The metal has to be at the right temperature for him to start on his forging. He is here sharpening a tool. We now get down to the stage of making a link. He has to reheat it and scarf the metal so that it will join together to make a continuous link. This is an art that has practically been lost. Finishing it off on the big iron. He is sharpening a tool here, a pick. The metal has to be at the right temperature to be hit in the right spot, to get the right temper and finish to it. A man inquiring whether he could put a nice tip onto his pneumatic drill piece. A view of the tools that he'd been mending.